so well, so beneath my laughter, as I sure do understand. Even Moses got excited when he saw the promised land. That's right, you're not for Texas. That's right, you're not for Texas. That's right, you're not for Texas. Texas wants you anyway. That's right, you're not for Texas. That's right, you're not for Texas. That's right, you're not for Texas. Texas wants you anyway. Let me help you, mister. Just pull your hat down the way I do, and buy your pants just a little longer. Next time somebody laughs at you, you just say, you're not for Texas. That's right, you're not for Texas. That's right, you're not for Texas. Texas wants you anyway. That's right, you're not for Texas. That's right, you're not for Texas. No, that's right, you're not for Texas. Texas wants you anyway. That's right, you're not for Texas. That's right, you're not for Texas. That's right, you're not for Texas. Texas wants you anyway. Texas wants you anyway.
Please rise for the presentation of the colors.
Color guard, attention. Color guard, forward march. Color guard, post the colors. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem, sung by Kilgore native Lana Phillips. Lana has been touring military bases and hospitals, performing for our troops, and will be releasing an album in November. Ms. Lana Phillips singing our national anthem.
Stripes and bright stars through the purple for the rampart we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets rang rifles bursting in air, gave through the night that a flag was there.
As we sing the Texas state song, Texas, Our Texas. pastor of Christ the King Catholic Church, Kilgore, and current pastor of Our Lady of Sorrows Catholic Church in Jacksonville. Former Navy chaplain and lieutenant, Father Marcus Myrick.
Let us pray. Gracious Father, we ask your blessings this day as we celebrate this anniversary of the founding of East Texas Oil Field. We are indebted and grateful for the hard work, industrious spirit, and resilience of all who have helped to make this area productive and a most valued contributor to our nation and the world. Their efforts help fuel an economy and win a world war. Their spirit touches our lives today. In that spirit, our communities have opened their arms to the needs of our brothers and sisters from the Gulf Coast. Help us to always remember that we are united in bonds of family and friendship. Lord, as we begin this celebration, help us keep in mind the needs of those who suffer. Keep in your loving arms the men and women of our military forces deployed around the world and in harm's way. Protect them and give their families peace of mind. Guide our celebration today. May it reflect the goodness you have shown us and help us build for an even brighter future. In your holy and precious name, we pray. Amen.
Please be seated. Good morning and welcome. What a great day, a day to celebrate the 75th Jubilee of the great East Texas Oil Field and the 25th birthday of the East Texas Oil Museum. Just think, on this day, this very day, 75 years ago, the Daisy Bradford III transformed all of East Texas, and 25 years ago today, this very day, we opened up the East Texas Oil Museum for the first time. This museum has brought in well over 1.25 million visitors in those 25 years. So today, we look back with pride on the glorious history that is around us, and we look forward with hope to the bright future for this region and for the entire energy industry. I want to thank all of you for attending today. As you know, there are many special guests, many people that need to be thanked and acknowledged, and it would be very difficult to do all of them by name. And so we'll try to acknowledge many of them by groups or category. Because of the number of groups and individuals to be recognized, please hold your applause until the very end. In our midst today, we have charter patrons of the East Texas Oil Museum Endowment who have stepped up and supported the efforts to financially secure the future of the East Texas Oil Museum. The names of the charter patrons are listed on the back of your program. Since the printing of that program, we have added East Texas Saltwater Disposal Company, Gaywood Oil and Gas, Scooter Griffin and GeoVest, Dr. and Mrs. Jerry Ted Roberts in honor of Floyd Childress, Lone Star Steel, Morris Farrell, Buddy and Patsy Stovall, K Castles, and United Engines. We also have those individuals and companies who have been underwriters of this very celebration. They're listed on the back of your program also. Since printing the program, the names of East Texas Saltwater Disposal Company, Interquest Corporation, and John C. Robbins have been added. To all of you charter patrons of the endowment and underwriters, a heartfelt thank you. Please stand at this time so that we can acknowledge you. If you are, and thank you very much, and applause is appropriate for that group because they have really stepped up, and I'll try to get through the rest of these groups without applause if possible. We've also want to acknowledge all elected and or appointed public officials, including members of the Board of Trustees. Would all of you please stand? whole group over there. We have members of the East Texas Soil Museum Guild, our docents and volunteers. Would you as a group please stand? Individual, Jackie Carter, who's the only person who has been a docent for the entire 25 years of the history of the East Texas Soil Museum and who has over 3,600 hours of service. Ms. Carter, would you wave so everybody can see who you are? We have with us today Charles and Mary Ellen Paramore. Charles Paramore and his company, Museum Arts, designed, installed, and have maintained the many exhibits here at the East Texas Soil Museum for the past 25 years. Charles? The wonderful keepsake historical program that you received for today's festivities were created and designed by Caleb Turtle and Terry Stembridge and Dockery House Publishing. Terry's back here, I see him, and I'm not sure Caleb's here, but thanks to you all for that wonderful, wonderful program. We also want to acknowledge the Desk and Derrick Club members from Tyler. Would that group please stand? They helped us this morning with our check-in and with what we're doing there and back in yellow. We have a large group today from the Chevron Gulf Reunion group. If you're part of that group, they've got their own tent over yonder, and they may have even started other festivities. Who knows? The Chevron group. We have an individual, Gloria Lawrence, who is administrator of the East Texas Engineering Association, who began with this organization in August of 1956. She's beginning her 50th year of service to the same organization in the oil patch. As well, we have numerous heirs and family of Daisy Bradford, Ed Lassiter, and Dad Joyner joining us today. So if you're any of that group, go ahead and stand up, please. Many individuals have labored long and hard for over 2 years to bring today's celebration to fruition. Special note, Claude Wallace and Carol Hinton are co-chairs of the Jubilee. Thank you, Carol and Claude, both of you, for your time, energy, persistence, unflagging enthusiasm. And with Carol, Claude, and all the members of any committee, stand, please, at this time so we can say thank you. If you've been on any of the planning committees working on this project. Thanks to the Kilgore Rotary Club for putting out the flags all over town for the celebration, as well as to AP Merritt and Merritt Toole for the flagpole, and to Congressman Gohmert and Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison for the flag, U.S. flag, and Representative Tommy Merritt and Chuck Hobson for the Texas flag, both of which have flown over the respective capitals. And finally, thanks to all the Kilgore College employees, community individuals who've supported and contributed to this event as well. And congratulations to all of you this day who have made your life, your living, from the great East Texas oil field. So if you're either a Kilgore College employee or a person who's made their life from this great East Texas oil field, stand, and now we can applaud all of these individuals. This time, it's a pleasure to announce that Lone Star Steel Company has chosen the East Texas Oil Museum at Kilgore College as a permanent home for the Chief Roughneck Hall of Fame. Lone Star Steel Company has been an integral part of the history of the East Texas oil field. For 50 years, Lone Star Steel, working closely with the Independent Petroleum Association of America, has recognized the giants of the industry. Lone Star Steel Company has been very instrumental in restoring the Joe Roughneck Park on Highway 64. We, as an East Texas community, owe them a big thank you for this civic involvement in our region and helping preserve our heritage. Byron Dunn, Mr. Byron Dunn, who is the president and CEO of Lone Star Steel Company, will come to the podium now to provide more information about the award and to officially unveil a facsimile of the Chief Roughneck Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you, Dr. Holda. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I have two distinct honors today. The first is a privilege of representing Lone Star Steel Company as we celebrate the 75th anniversary of the East Texas oil fields, along with the 25th anniversary of this East Texas Oil Museum. Lone Star Steel has been producing and selling oil country tubular goods, casing and tubing and line pipe products here in East Texas for more than 50 years. East Texas is our home. We love it here. We have, however, survived many, many lean years which have plagued this volatile oil and gas industry. So we're always grateful when we see better times like these come our way. Because the oil and gas industry we serve not only fuels our nation's economy, but it feeds the families of our 1,600 employees up Highway 259. It utilizes many leading-edge sciences, technologies, and techniques, and it has been a substantial part of the economic engine for the citizens here in East Texas for more than 3/4 of a century. It clearly has an important past, and certainly in my future, in my view, it has a great and bright future. If you haven't already, as Dr. Holda said, I hope you'll take time to visit Pioneer Park down on Highway 64, where Lone Star Steel constructed a monument several years ago in honor of the Daisy Bradford number 3, which blew in 300 barrels a day from 3,592 feet on October the 3rd, 1930, which was actually the beginning of the East Texas oil boom. That monument stands as a tribute to the character, the courage, the spirit of those wildcatters who have followed. On top of the monument is a figure of a man who personifies the qualities and the distinctive character which are required to persevere in this challenging business. That figure has a name. He's Joe Roughneck. And every year since 1955, Lone Star Steel has sponsored the Chief Roughneck Award as a way to recognize the determination, the leadership, the integrity of those unique individuals who have made the petroleum industry their passion. It is what am I trying to say? It is presented each year to one individual whose accomplishments and character best represents the highest ideals in the oil and gas industry, and whose stature in the industry is consistent with each of those leaders who have previously received that most treasured honor. Today, I will unveil for you the Chief Roughneck Hall of Fame exhibit, which will serve as a lasting tribute to all those extraordinary individuals whose work and lifetime achievements have been recognized by having received this cherished award. We are fortunate today to have some of those legendary individuals here. So I'm going to introduce them, and if you would, hold your applause until I've had a chance to introduce all of them. First, we have Jimmy Thompson, who's the managing general partner of J. Cleo Thompson. Jimmy was our Chief Roughneck in 2001, and Jimmy has his wife here somewhere. There's Dorothy over there. George Alcorn, who was president of Alcorn Exploration and was the Chief Roughneck in 1997. Bob Fowler was president and chief operating officer of InSearch Exploration, and now RGF Investments. Bob was our Chief Roughneck in 1988. His wife Anita's in the audience somewhere, so. And then Gene Ames, who's chairman and CEO of Venus Exploration. Gene was our Chief Roughneck in 1995, and by the way, he's the father of our Texas Railroad Commissioner, Elizabeth Ames Jones, who's joined us on the podium. I'd also like Steve Fowler to come forward, who's our Vice President and the Senior Commercial Officer for Lone Star Steel, to help me with the unveiling. While he's coming forward, I want to remind you that later this month, I'll have the privilege of announcing the 50th recipient of the Chief Roughneck Award at the Independent Petroleum Association of America's Convention in Houston, Texas. That honoree will receive, among other things, a bust of Joe Roughneck, the same figure that stands atop the monument marking the site of the Daisy Bradford at Pioneer Park, and also atop a twin monument at the site of the world-famous Spindletop well a little further south from here. Lone Star Steel is proud to have the privilege of sponsoring this prestigious Chief Roughneck Award for over 50 years. So now it is my pleasure to unveil for you the rendering of the Hall of Fame exhibit, which will appear in the H.L. Hunt room inside this impressive oil museum. And by the way, Mr. H.L. Hunt was himself a recipient of the Chief Roughneck Award in 1966. So I hope you'll take time to visit the museum after festivities and see the exhibit at Thank you. When oil was discovered here in East Texas, the idea of the world ever running out of oil perhaps seemed laughable. Well, now that thought isn't quite as funny. We're now importing nearly 60% of the crude oil that we consume in this country. That said, with all the new technologies and techniques available in the oil and gas industry today, I expect that the East Texas oil fields, as they have for the last 75 years, will continue to have and be an important contributor to the energy supply of our nation for many years to come. I want to thank you, Dr. Holder, for the privilege of being here today, and thank you all for coming to celebrate this exciting time. Dr. Holder.
I encourage you to go in the museum and see the real thing. It's very impressive. Next award is one of great pleasure for us. In 1940, shortly after the discovery of oil in East Texas, this region was blessed that Magnolia Petroleum, a subsidiary of Mobil Oil, now ExxonMobil, moved Harvey LeVan Cliburn from Shreveport to their East Texas offices. Mr. Cliburn brought his wife, Hilda B. O'Brien Cliburn, and their young son, Harvey LeVan Jr., to build a life in this community. And build it they did. A native of Mississippi and a veteran of World War I, Mr. Cliburn served as the president of the Kilgore Rotary Club and had over 40 years of perfect attendance. He was a founder of the East Texas Treatment Center and a deacon at the First Baptist Church. Rilda B. was a wonderful musician and had a large studio of very talented pianists, one of whom included her son. In 1958, when Van won the International Tchaikovsky competition in Moscow, he became more than a world-famous pianist. He became a symbol of the international language of music and an ambassador for this country. It would take much too long to list his accomplishments, the accomplishments of Kilgore's favorite son, Van Cliburn. This occasion, the Diamond Jubilee of the East Texas Oil Field and the silver anniversary of the East Texas Oil Museum, provides Kilgore College with an opportunity to honor Van's father, to establish the Harvey LeVan Cliburn Memorial Scholarship. It will be awarded to a deserving student in a career related to the petroleum industry. And at this time, it is my distinct pleasure to invite our friend and favorite son, Van Cliburn, forward to receive this award in honor of his father.
How very thrilled my father would be today, because he loved Kilgore, Texas, as you cannot imagine. He always, when going to other Rotary clubs, would say that the masthead of the Kilgore News Herald read, "Kilgore, Texas, capital of the world's largest oil field." They thought he was a braggart, but then he reminded everyone Texans do like to brag. But after the great and sensational drilling and gushers, there was something to brag about. And we had so many wonderful people to find prosperity and success, but they also knew what to do with it. They had a vision for Kilgore. What did they first go to? Education. They built this wonderful Kilgore College, which has graduated so many fine, wonderful students. The East Texas field, the shelf, will be studied by geologists and geology majors for many decades and even centuries to come. When I was a very young person, I thought that probably I lived between two invisible marble pillars. One was visible, that was oil. The other was invisible, that was music. But you see, there's a very great and distinct relationship between the two. They are both physically demanding. You have to dig for it. If you're going to produce a sound, you have to dig for it. If you're going to produce oil, you have to dig for it. So they're very allied. It also means that you have to really concentrate and find a spiritual connection with what you're going to do. My father was a bit of a philosopher, and he was very thrilled when he was reading some of the ancient philosophers' writings, and he came across a line that has always been, ever since he told me about it, has always been very important to me. And that was, if you're looking for the ideal individual, it is a person who has the heart that thinks and a mind that feels. So when you have all of these facilities, that the abundance of petroleum, and I call it classic petroleum and classical music, you have something that has a great foundation in the lives and minds and hearts of so many people, because one does assist the other. It helps a child as they're going through school to have a passport to the invisible, wherein the creative imagination can be stimulated to great dreams, and so that very child can aspire to lofty endeavors. When I was a child, I had to know who Chopin was, as equally as I had to know who Daisy Bradford was. And I think that's terribly important, because each is a part of the other. And when we have our young people educated and stimulated to know that one success will feed the other success, which is spiritual, then we have accomplished something that is absolutely invaluable. My father confided in me that when he was young, he wished very much to be a medical doctor. Hence, all of his life, he had great concern, and he was so happy when he found his ability to coordinate with the men of this community in founding the East Texas Treatment Center, which helps so many young people. He was also a musician. He had studied music, and he knew how to read and write music. He played a woodwind instrument, and it was because of him he encouraged me to play the clarinet. And I played for 5 years in the Kilgore High School marching band. Now, I'll tell you one thing. I was not a great clarinetist. When I was 12 years old, he came to me and he said, "Sonny boy," I was always Sonny boy. "Sonny boy, I think it's time for you to learn the facts of life." And he said, "Now you come into the room." We sat down. And I did not know what to be prepared for. And he said, I'll tell you, sonny boy, it's called depletion allowance. And it's 27.5%. Now, he's gone. And the day the Congress rescinded that, I said to my mother, you know, I'm really kind of glad that Daddy's not here. But he's surely making revolutions in the grave. He had a great sympathy for young people and their struggles to go to school, and he was always so trying to aid and assist young people in their quest to go to school. That's why this scholarship is very meaningful to me, his son. Before my father died, the last words he ever spoke were to me. He said, "Hello, sonny boy. I love you. Look after Mother." The expression in his face told me that all I had known, my mother was his only and great love for all of his life. My father was a very honorable man. He had incredible self-discipline. His integrity was beyond reproach. And if I say that knowing him as well as I did and being his child, you may believe me. But I think since I believe that he's looking down on us, I'm very, very happy that this day has arrived. The Diamond Jubilee of Oil, the wonderful tribute to this incredible oil museum. I believe what he would want me to tell you would be, thank you for this honor. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. But since he was very Texan and very sentimental, he would want me to tell you all, I love you.
Van, thank you for those very moving remarks, and I think you can sense that the people here love you also. We have a number of resolutions that have been presented to Kilgore College, to the Oil Museum, on the occasion of this event. Many of these are beautiful and framed, and we will be displaying these in the museum. We have resolutions from the U.S. House and Senate, a resolution from the Texas legislature. We have very nicely framed resolutions from Gregg County and the City of Kilgore, and there are others. And if I read all of these whereases, the only resolution will be let's forget the rest of the program and go to lunch. So I'm going to express my appreciation to all of those entities that passed resolutions and forego reading them all individually. We do have one other award that is not on your program because we wanted to keep it a surprise. So, Joe White, will you come forward, please? For over 25 years, Joe White has been the one and only director of the East Texas Oil Museum. If it were not for Joe White, I'm not sure that we would actually be celebrating the 25th anniversary of the East Texas Oil Museum this day. much in the way that Gussie Nell Davis birthed the Rangerettes and considered that organization to be her very child. Joe has birthed this museum and raised it as his own child. On the occasion of this celebration, Joe, we have a resolution to present to you, intended to be permanently displayed in the East Texas Oil Museum, and we also have a personal gift to take with you. Personal gift is an antique pocket watch that has been engraved on the day of this occasion. And the resolution says, whereas Joe White, along with Lynn Welch and Dr. Heimenlofer, was a member of the founding trio for the East Texas Oil Museum, and whereas he had an active part in the acquisition of our 4 famous mules, the buildings in Boomtown, the barbershop, the drugstore, and much, much more. And wherefore he has faithfully served as Director, Development Chairman, Kiosk Operator, Historian, Publicist, Trainer of Docents, and Conductor of Tours for thousands of children and adults. And whereas more than 1,200,000 visitors have attended the museum and learned of the fascinating history of the East Texas oil field, because of his efforts, therefore, be it resolved that we all give heartfelt thanks to Joe White for his 25 years of illustrious service, the Oil Jubilee Planning Committee, Board Administration, faculty, and students at Kilgore College. We present this to you. And I know this is dangerous, but we're going to give Joe a chance to make some remarks.
Miss Gussie Nell Davis was the founder and creator and nurturer of the Rangerettes. Dr. Holda never makes a mistake, but he misspoke in one regard. I was just one of the midwives of the East Texas Oil Museum. The museum was the idea of the late Al Hill, Margaret Hunt Hill's husband. Mr. Hill suggested the idea of building a museum in East Texas to pay tribute to the pioneers of the great East Texas oil field. Her siblings, Lamar, Bunker, Herbert, Caroline, Hance, said, Margaret, if you want to build a museum, we'll support you through Placid Oil. And through the local support of Charlie Duvall, the publisher of the paper, longtime friend of Mr. Hance, Mrs. Duvall, father who worked for Hunt Oil, Dr. Randolph Watson, and First Lady of Kilgore, Ellen Watson, they were the ones that really brought this to fruition. And I would be remiss if I did not make you aware of that. Charles Paramore of Dallas was chosen to design the exhibits. It took 3 years to bring this out of the ground. And the graciousness of the people of East Texas who opened their garages, their attics, their warehouses, and in some cases their pocketbooks, to help us acquire things that we could not find to be donated. And we opened this museum on the 50th occasion of the discovery. And I retired October 3rd, 1930, because it hasn't been work. It's truly been a treasure and a pleasure. Thank you very much.
For those of you in the petroleum industry, you know the importance of our state government and particularly the Texas Railroad Commission to your profession. We're honored today to have the chair of the Texas Railroad Commission, Elizabeth Ames Jones, with us today. And as Byron Dunn noted, her father is one of the members of that Chief Roughneck Hall of Fame. So she comes from good petroleum stock and is well qualified to serve as the chair of this committee. She has a long history of public service in the Texas government, Texas legislature, and with the petroleum industry. And we look forward to great leadership from her as chairman of the Railroad Commission. Please join me in welcoming Railroad Commission Chair Elizabeth Ames Jones.
Thank you, Dr. Holda. It's a privilege and a complete honor to be here to have this opportunity today. This is my first address as the chairman of the Railroad Commission, the third woman to ever serve in that capacity in the 114-year history of the commission, and tomorrow I'll be chairing my first conference. And I can tell you, though, that privilege can hardly compare with the privilege of being on the same stage as your chief roughneck dad. And Jean Ames, who has been an inspiration and a mentor to me. An even greater opportunity this morning was to go down memory lane and to be able to claim and reclaim his memories as my memories. How exciting for me to know that I am not only the granddaughter, of course I've known this for a while because it's all I've been hearing about for years, the granddaughter and the great-granddaughter of wildcatters from East Texas, and who had their business and their operations and their refinery in Gregg County. It's just makes me so proud to be able to be here on this stage with so many other chief roughnecks, and of course Van Cliburn. To follow him on the stage is quite an opportunity as well, and an honor. And I dare say that he certainly is very much a chief roughneck, as well as those who have been officially recognized. And I'd like to thank you, Van, for the gift to your community and to your roots of education. As a railroad commissioner, I am keenly aware of the needs of education in this industry. As the industry matures, and so many of our geologists and geophysicists also mature in a wonderful way with it, it is so important that we find ways to inspire new blood to come into this industry and look forward to the future. So as we congratulate East Texas on the significant successes of the past and what we know went on and how it worked to save our country, and we flowed to victory during World War II on a field of East Texas oil, and some of that I know was produced by my great-grandfather. But I'd like to say, as we celebrate the past, look forward to the future. And I hope, as a railroad commissioner and a daughter and a granddaughter and a great-granddaughter of East Texas, to be able to find a way to inspire people, those chief roughnecks who are going to come behind all of us in the next 75 years to come. So my hat's off to the East Texas oil field. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to be here. A salute to everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. East Texas depends on its congressmen and senators to represent our interests in Washington. East Texas is fortunate to have a freshman dedicated to carrying the concerns of East Texans to the Beltway. Congressman Louis Gohmert may have been in Washington less than a year, but he has already made his mark. Please join me in welcoming our U.S. Congressman, Congressman Louis Gohmert.
Well, it's certainly an honor and privilege to be here today, and I appreciate the kind comments, Bill, the introduction. I ran into the chairman of appropriations in Washington just the other night, and his wife was with him, and he said, oh, I wanted you to meet my wife. And he said to his wife, this is Louis Gohmert. He's a freshman congressman from Texas, and he is always stirring things up around here. And I thought about it after I walked off. I thought, well, maybe that's not such a bad thing, because I look at the heritage and growing up in East Texas, and for example, reading about this jewel that shone so bright all around the world that went and took the musical world by storm. Guy from right around here, the sky was the limit, and he set that example for all the rest of us. And Ben Cliburn and I will always be grateful for the inspiration that your life and your dedication has given to those of us in East Texas. Thank you for what you do. And you know, as we contemplate what we have here and what we're about here today, the 75th anniversary of the oil field, you know, you think about what it took to find that, the perseverance, the determination, the hard work, the undying commitment, and let's face it, a little bit of divine providence. I believe it was divine providence when weather turned so bad and the British weren't looking for an attack Christmas Eve as Washington crossed the Delaware or as the war advanced and the British surrounded 6,000 of our troops that would later be needed, and a fog came in and allowed them to escape from certain destruction. I think that there was divine providence involved after looking and looking to find there had to be oil here in East Texas, and then for things to break down at the place they didn't originally want to drill and then hit the field there. There was divine providence. It took determination, it took commitment, it took perseverance, it took hard work, and anybody that's ever been around the oil field knows the kind of work it took. But God has favored us, and I believe that it was divine providence because God knew that we needed that oil to win World War II. And those of you familiar with the Battle of the Bulge, many of us believe that it was fuel that kept the Germans from winning the Battle of the Bulge. Many people don't realize how close that came. We had fuel, they didn't, we won. Thank God for that discovery back 75 years ago. Thank God for the commitment. I'll tell you something else, a little parenthetical here. I think that the Kilgore Bulldogs can take a little piece of advice from what's happened with the East Texas oil field and the discovery. I think Kilgore College had a good victory this weekend, but being 1-3, folks, they struck out over and over before they hit the oil field that won the war, developed East Texas, and made this country as great as it has been. Determination. And just in finishing up, I had a hero, another one that shone bright, named Bob Murphy from Nacogdoches. And I heard him when I was in high school give a speech, and he finished telling about some guy that always had coffee there in the coffee shop in Nacogdoches. And as the waitress would give him a cup of coffee, he'd take we used to have sugar bottles back then. Some of y'all remember it had the hole in the top. And he'd just sit there and just pour sugar in there and never stir it up. And he'd get a refill and he'd pour more sugar in there and never stir it up. And finally one day, after about the fourth cup, Bob turned to him and said, "Why don't you stir up what you got?" And he said, "Oh, Bob, if I stirred up all that sugar, it'd make me sick." Well, we should stir up what we got. I'm not embarrassed to be introduced to somebody stirring things up. I'm not embarrassed to be, and I'm so proud to be here among leaders who have stirred things up. And by golly, there are good days yet to come, whether you're the Kilgore Bulldogs, Kilgore College, East Texas Oil Field. There are good things to come. And I'd like to we presented a flag to be flown, and I'd like to present this flag. Bill, if you would come forward. We have a certificate, and it just says in recognition and appreciation for 25 years of preserving rich history of the East Texas oil field and observance of the 25th anniversary of the discovery of the East Texas oil field. This flag is flown over the U.S. Capitol and is presented to the East Texas Oil Museum, Kilgore College. Thank you for all you do to preserve our history and to send us farther into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. We're delighted to have you representing us. Although not listed on your program today, we have a dear, longtime friend of East Texas who is here, Congressman Ralph Hall. For years, Congressman Hall represented this district, and he's well known to just about everybody. And people still say, "I love Ralph Hall from Rockwall." As a member of the House Energy Committee and chair of a subcommittee on fossil fuel, Congressman Hall has actually conducted hearings at the East Texas Oil Museum and used this site to educate his colleagues. Please welcome a longtime friend of Kilgore and East Texas, Congressman Ralph Hall.
Thank you very much. And when I think of Louis Gohmert, I had this district from 1962 on until I looked in the mirror and thought I saw Lieutenant Governor, and I missed several years, but I got you back in 80, and I've had you up until the redistricting a couple of years ago. So Louis is great. He's great to work with. I feel kind of biblical when I talk about him even because there's some passage in the Bible about one who comes after me is greater than me. Louis is greater than any of us. He does a good job. The president's crazy about him. He's successful with the rest of the Congress. Nobody dislikes him yet. They haven't had a chance to. But it's good to be here, and I too have a flag that's flown, and we help one another. With Louis, with his, I've helped him. He stood on my shoulder, got by the Capitol there, climbed up to the second floor, and finally Kay Bailey pulled him on up to the top. He flew this flag, and I pitched him my flag up there. Took a couple of pitches to him, but he flew it also. So both of these have been flown over the Capitol. Louis, you weren't there at the time when we could really fly them over the Capitol. If we forget that we had not flown one over the Capitol, we put it in our briefcase when we came home, and the plane took off and break it half. We really haven't flown over the Capitol. Well, it's good to leave the acrimony of the floor of Congress. Come here to look into the faces of people that are happy about the situation, happy as to what we're doing. Really not afraid of the future, and you're very proud of your past. You're proud of one another, and that's what I've always liked about Kilgore, great county in this part of the country. I recognize all of you that have been alluded to here several times. You're the ones that put the black gold into the pipeline, the Big Inch pipeline that goes all the way up to the northeast coast, went into the Lend-Lease destroyers that we gave England that helped Churchill keep Hitler fought off until the Americans came to their aid. I well remember the day the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. I was 17 years old, working on a river crossing for a contracting company across the Tom Digby River in Alabama. And a fellow ran down one Sunday morning. We worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, and ran down there and said, the Japanese are bombing Pearl Harbor. I told the guy next to me there, was working on a bulldozer, I said, we better get back on that highway and hitchhike back to Dallas. Those Japs will cut us off. I thought Pearl Harbor down around Mobile. But we were very happy that day. And by the way, about today, I'm sorry I was a little late, but we were driving as fast as this car that we were in could drive. And I was wondering what I was going to tell some highway patrolman if he stopped us. I was going to try to use the deal where a driver had been looking for a place to park like a lot of you all had to do today. And he just stuck a note under his windshield, said, I've circled this block for 20 minutes. I'm late for an appointment. If I don't park here, I'll lose my job. Forgive us our trespasses. The officer left him a note and said, I've circled this block also for 20 years. If I don't give you a ticket, I'll lose my job. Lead us not into temptation. With that, let me thank you for having me here. Honored to be here. A lot of good things have happened. Louis told you of some of the bills we passed. For the first time in 10 years, we passed an energy bill. Many of you have testified there for the energy bill. Joe Barton, our new chairman, a Texan, did that no one has been able to do in the last 10 years. He not only passed one energy bill, he passed 2 energy bills in the last 3 months. The first one was open up the Gulf, open up areas for us to drill. The second one was to provide for more refineries. We need refineries. There's provisions in this bill that tells the EPA when we seek some type of a permit to build a refinery or to make some success, some step toward getting energy efficient. We are always held up by the EPA or some government regulation that you have to try to get around. We put provisions in this directed to them. When an application is made to you, you'll give us a yes or no in 30 days, sometimes in 6 months. They won't give you a yes or no a lot of times because if they give you an answer, yes or no, you can appeal from it. Startle some of them into action. We're going to get some refineries, we're going to get some good energy, and we're not going to have to rely on people who don't trust us, who don't care for us, people we don't trust. We are foolish to let 62% of our energy have to come from overseas, from countries just like the ones I've described. We have plenty of energy in ANWR. We're going to drill ANWR. We're going to drill it this next year. We're going to pass the bill. We've already got it underway in the House. The Senate committee has already approved it. They won't have a chance to disapprove it. ANWR is going to be drilled. The depths of the Gulf are going to be drilled. We're going to defeat this situation. I think that our youngsters should have something to look forward to rather than what branch of the Army or services am I going to go into, what school or profession am I going to attend. We can do that if we solve the energy problem. God bless you. God bless this day. God bless our country. And God bless our president at this time who's having a hard time. He's resolute. He's educated. He was our governor. He's a godly person. And he's determined. He was on the boat with the Pope one time, and the Pope's cap flew off into the river there. Two of the sailors started taking their shoes off. Our president said, don't kick your shoes off, keep them on. I can walk on the water, I'll walk out there and get it. Cap on. President Bush walked on the water, walked out there and picked the cap up and took it right up and gave it to him. And the Pope blessed him and said, thank God we have a president like our Lord and Savior who can walk on the water. So the next day, the New York Times and the Washington Post headline said, Bush can't swim.
Thank you, Congressman. East Texas Oil Field is not the only group celebrating a 75th Jubilee this year. The Society of Exploration Geophysicists is also celebrating a Diamond Jubilee. Craig Beasley serves as the current president of this international organization, and I am sure that he will tell you he has some Kilgore roots. Please join me in welcoming Craig Beasley, the president of the Society of Exploration Geophysicists.
Thanks, honored guests and ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to be here. Yes, I was in fact born here. I attended school. I lived just a few blocks from here. And it's funny, as I was walking up on the stage today, I passed through the double line of Rangerettes, and I recalled that when I was about 8 years old, I had a paper route, not for the Dallas Morning News, but for the Kilgore paper, because I couldn't carry the big Dallas paper. And I was fortunate enough to have this area, and so I had the Rangerettes dorm in my paper route. And I tell you, an 8-year-old kid collecting subscriptions on Saturday morning, it convinced me those were the most beautiful girls in the world, and I was reminded of that today. Well, I'm straying a little bit. I didn't come here to tell you about my personal history, but I did want to say a word about the East Texas Field. You know, growing up here, I didn't realize what a seminal role this field played in defining the business, the politics, and even the technology of the oil industry as we know it today. If you study your history, you will find that most of the difficult questions that we take for granted now in the ruling petroleum industry were answered here. And it was not an easy time, I can tell you that. My dad was roustabout here. He worked for wildcatters. He was paid in oil leases, so he says. He never hung on to any of them, unfortunately. But he had lots of stories, so I learned very young that the oil business was a tough place. Nevertheless, I've made it my career. And the reason I'm here today, really, is to tell a little bit of the history, just a few words that it's not talked about so often, and to offer a bit of an apology, but I'll get to that in just a moment. It turns out that the East Texas oil field and geophysicists' histories are intimately intertwined. The story is that actually, in years before the famous wells were drilled here, very early seismic crews prospected all over this part of the country. And the geophysicists and geologists and the management of the major oil companies didn't come up with a drilling prospect. In fact, you've read some of the famous quotes about drinking all the oil you find in East Texas. Now, I have to tell you, that's a difficult thing to live down. If you're a geophysicist, you miss the biggest one in the country. And you can just imagine some of the jokes that must have gone around about things that geophysicists, very obvious things that geophysicists wouldn't be able to find. But, ladies and gentlemen, those jokes stopped a long time ago. Seismic technology now adds some of the most valuable information to the oil industry that there is. In fact, it's very difficult in today's world to drill a well without using seismic technology. So we're long past those days, but I think it's appropriate for me on the 75th anniversary of both the East Texas Field and the founding of our Geophysical Society to offer a formal apology from our 24,000 members around the world. We're sorry we didn't find it. But in retrospect, if we had found it, I'm not sure we'd be here today. I'm not sure that history would be quite as interesting and quite as colorful as it had found it the way it was. So I would just close by saying that certainly this field is in decline. There's no question about that. But if you look at the long-term prospects for energy and the world's growing demand and the fact that there's limited supplies, we may very well come back one day. Because the one thing I've learned about oil fields and all my work is that we never really understand them. They're never as simple as you think they are. And just given the price of oil, one day we may be back and we may be doing 3D seismic in this area, looking for the attic oil and trying to understand maybe some of the complexities in this field that we never were able to understand. And I'll guarantee you, we won't miss it again. So on behalf of the Society of Exploration Geophysicists, I'd like to present a commemorative globe to Joe and the university, if I could. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. The Texas Alliance of Energy Producers, with over 2,700 members, is one of the largest oil and gas trade associations in the nation. Pat French is the Senior Vice President and Head of the Houston office, as well as the President of the Foundation for Energy Education. We're looking forward to a good, long collaboration with Mr. French and his organization as we try to provide educational programs and training for the energy industry. Please join me in welcoming Pat French.
Thank you, Dr. Holda. Well, on behalf of the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers, I'd like to just say that we are delighted to help celebrate this Diamond Jubilee. It's quite a day, and it's a tremendous bit of Texas history. One thing about this industry that many people outside of Texas are not aware of is the great contribution that this industry has made to the rest of the nation. This industry personifies what the free enterprise system is all about, and personifies what America is all about. It's also provided America with a standard of living that is unparalleled anywhere and at any time. I will say that recognition of the recent sad events with Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, these events have highlighted the importance of energy to our economy, to our way of life, and the indispensable role our industry plays in providing that resource. I want to keep my remarks short, but there's absolutely no question that the completion of Daisy Bradford, number 3, on October 3rd, 1930, brought many profound changes to East Texas, to Texas, and to America. We at the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers are absolutely delighted to be here today to help celebrate this important anniversary. Thank you.
We're delighted today to have Charles Wooldridge here. Charles is affiliated with the Chevron Group. He's going to offer us a musical selection.
flying 6 flags over Texas, and I no other can claim. We have a very unique history, and this has brought us great fame. Texans are proud of their heritage. We think it's mighty grand. From Mexico to the Confederacy, they have fought to save our land. First came the Spaniards. Oh, they were very bold, for they came to our land seeking bright and shiny gold. Next came the French, but they were not so bad. They only came exploring, not to take what we had. Then came Santa Anna to rule a dictator's hand, to level high taxes, to take our stock in land. But Texas would not take it. Texans are very tough. They pushed him back across the border. Texas had taken enough. The Republic of Texas was on the club. Our flag was glorious as could be. The Texan Rangers defended us. Our Navy sailed the sea. For 10 years we were independent, ruled by no other land. They knew they could not take us, but we fight to the very last man. Then we joined the Union. By one vote they let us in. And when they split the Union, we had to fight again. But when the war was over, we had the United States. And since Texas had joined them, it was a better place. We joined with pride and honor. Our great wealth would be found, while black gold was waiting deep in our Texas ground.
It's my distinct pleasure to introduce to you today Mr. Kent Hance. Born and raised in Dimmitt, Texas, he received his BBA from Texas Tech University and a law degree from the University of Texas School of Law. Upon graduation, began a law practice in Lubbock and taught business law at Texas Tech. He began his political career in 1974 when he defeated a heavily favored incumbent to become Texas State Senator from the Lubbock area. In 1978, Mr. Hance was elected to the U.S. Congress. During his first week, he was named chairman of the Freshman Caucus and named the best freshman congressman by Texas Business Magazine. In 1987, Governor Bill Clements appointed Mr. Hance to the Texas Railroad Commission, and in 1988, he was the first Republican ever to be elected to the commission and served as chair of the commission until January 1990. Mr. Hance currently practices law with offices in Austin, Dallas, and Washington as a partner with Hance, Scarborough, and Wright, concentrating on state and federal administrative, energy, regulatory, and legislative law. In addition, he provides his clients with expertise in international oil and gas and energy-related matters. He's a frequent attendee at OPEC meetings and is active in the acquisition of international oil and gas drilling rights on behalf of U.S. and international clients. Mr. Hance's wife, Susie Hance, is also an attorney. He has 2 grown children, Ron, an attorney, and Susan, an attorney. The whole family of attorneys. His daughter, Susan Sorrells, and her husband, Phil Sorrells, are both graduates of the Texas Tech School of Law. He's the proud grandfather of 3 grandchildren, Ellen Sorrells, Andrew Sorrells, and Will Sorrells, state senator, U.S. congressman, railroad commissioner, and a definite friend of the energy industry. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Kent Hance.
Bill, thank you very much. I want to say congratulations, and none of you died of sunstroke so far at the front. You know, at the back they've got a little shade, and I will keep that in mind as I make my remarks. Also, I want to say a special thanks to my friend Ralph Hall, one of the best guys I ever served with, a great American, a true patriot. Louis Gohmert's doing a fabulous job. When the people in Louisiana said they needed $250 billion, I they said, send us $250 billion. He went, we might ought to look at open first. And I can keep that up, Congressman. We want to help them, but we didn't take the raises, my dad used to say. The other, Elizabeth Ames Jones is doing a great job at the Railroad Commission. I'm proud of her. Also, Senator Eltief is here. He's doing an excellent job. And my friend Tommy Merritt, who I've known forever when I was in Congress fighting the windfall profits tax, he was up there helping me. I want to just mention briefly 3 very important dates in the history of the oil business in the United States. One was August 27th in 1859 when Colonel Drake found oil in Titusville, Pennsylvania. Colonel Drake was a man of uniform, but he was a conductor on the railroad. He really wasn't a colonel. And he was somewhat a little questionable in some of his dealings, but he was the first person in the United States to drill for oil and find it. Some people had drilled in salt domes and found oil, but they weren't looking for oil. They didn't want oil. The reason he was looking for oil is that whale oil was becoming so expensive because it had become scarce that it made it very difficult for people to pay for that, and they were trying to find something else. The second great date would have been January the 10th, 1901, when Captain Lucas, who really was a captain, hit Spindletop. And the third great day was 75 years ago today, right here in East Texas, when Dad Joyner, on the Daisy Bradford number 3, hit oil. If you look at what happened, at that time there really was no regulation to speak of. The Railroad Commission was created to regulate railroads. They started regulating natural gas pipelines because they were close to the railroads, and then they got into the oil regulation. But when the East Texas field hit, the East Texas operators were operating on a theory that if the price dropped, the price was around $1.30 when it first started. If the price went down, you made up for it in volume. And there was a farmer in West Texas one time, he was going broke, and I said, what are you going to do? And he said, I guess I'll make up for it in volume. And anyway, they were driving the price down. They got it down to $0.10 a barrel, and people were drilling side-by-side wells. And so at that point in time, they needed more help from the legislature. And legislation was passed giving the Railroad Commission authority to prorate and decide how many days that you could actually pump. Ross Sterling was governor at the time and sent the National Guard in to try to enforce it. He was later overruled by the federal courts, and he appointed Ernest Thompson, who was the mayor of Amarillo, to come down and as railroad commissioner and regulated, and he regulated from a 10th and enforced proration. And the result of it was, after many court fights, a lot of legislation, they went over a period of almost 40 years where the determining factor on the price of oil worldwide was the Texas Railroad Commission. We used to listen to the radio once a month to find out what the proration was going to be for the next month. And that was the history of the Railroad Commission, most determining factor worldwide, until OPEC came along and started in 1960. And by the late 69, 70, 73, it became apparent they were the swing producer. And OPEC has been able to set prices ever since, until really true supply and demand has been enforced for the last several years. We have a situation now that I think is excellent. I hope it doesn't get much higher. My greatest fear of what could happen to us now in the oil and gas industry is for Congress, and I'm not talking about our congressmen, but other congressmen, to overreact and try to do some adjustment when in fact right now we're in a supply and demand situation. And so that's the big thing that we have to watch out for. Also, I would point out that China is driving this. I testified at the Railroad Commission State of the Hearing Commissioner in 1995 and said the number one factor over the next 20 years on the price of oil will be China. Third world countries the people in those countries want 3 things. That they want a television, they want a telephone, and they want a car. If one person out of 100 in China had a car, the price of oil would probably be $300 a barrel. They're tired of walking, and I don't blame them. But you take 1 billion, 200 million people. You know, somebody said, well, maybe they'll just buy. They don't have to buy a lot. Japan used to be the second largest consumer of oil after the United States. China had just blown by. And they will take our place as the #1 consumer of oil within the next 15 years. So, you know, I think things look good for the oil and gas industry. East Texas has done so much. Some of the people have alluded to the fact that World War II would not have been won had it not been for the big inch and the little big inch, and providing for the energy that it took to win the war. General Patton said they would have not defeated Rommel in the North Africa in the desert had Rommel not run out of energy. General Patton, by the way, was stationed at Fort Bliss in Texas at one time as a young captain, and the commander of the base was Black Jack Pershing, General Black Jack Pershing, and he assigned him, he gave him 200 soldiers, and he said, your assignment is to keep Pancho Villa out of Texas and New Mexico. And about 2 weeks later, he realized he hadn't seen Patton. And he got to checking on him, and he was 165 miles south of El Paso chasing Pancho Villa. And he sent word for him to come back, and he said, you can't invade another country. And General Patton said, you wanted him kept out? If I'm chasing him 165 miles south of El Paso, he's not going to be in Texas or New Mexico. And General Pershing at that time said he knew that Captain Patton, that was going to be an aggressive soldier. But I just want to tell you that this is a grand occasion. Van Cliburn, I appreciate your remarks. They were from the heart. They spoke of your dad. They spoke of your love for this area. You know, the people in West Texas and East Texas are virtually the same. The landscape's different, but they think alike, and they're good, solid people. We produce musicians. Y'all produced Van Cliburn. All we had was Buddy Holly and Waylon Jennings and Roy Orbison. We weren't quite as refined as the East Texas production of music, but you did a great job, and to Charles Wooldridge, excellent job on your remarks, and I appreciate your being here. Some of you have been seated, and that's great, but you've been in the sun, that's bad. Some of you have been standing, and that's bad, but you've been in the shade, and that's good. And a few of you over here have had both the shade and being able to be seated, and that's even better. I look forward to the barbecue, and God bless East Texas and all you have done for this nation. Thank you.
In a minute, we'll have a benediction and then a couple of closing remarks and some directions, and then we will be dismissed. I'd like to invite Dr. William J. Ingersoll, pastor of the First Presbyterian Church, Kilgore, forward to give our benediction. First Presbyterian Church, Kilgore, has quite a historical connection. I was talking to Billy Bob Prim earlier before today's ceremony. He was telling me how when the Lou Della Prim came in, it was during church. And Mama Della had told him, well, if God wanted us to be out there, he would. And right now we're in church, so we're going to stay in here and pray. So while everybody else went out to see the Discovery Well, she stayed in church and prayed. Dr. Ingersoll.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace, both now and forevermore. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Ingersoll. Thanks to all of the people who were participating today. A couple reminders. One, there is a whole host of activities going on through the day. Flower show will be held this afternoon, I think from 2 to 5 in the historic Malcolm and Katie Mae Crim home, right south of this place. It's a very short walk. Thanks to Jim and Victoria Eggers for allowing us to use that historic home. You can walk down there, it's close, or we have a couple golf carts if you need a ride. There will be several lines at the barbecue lunch. We invite you to stay on campus for the day, enjoy the day. Feel free to tour the East Texas Oil Museum, to tour the museum and view the Chief Roughneck Hall of Fame. Admission to the Oil Museum is free today. And for those of you that know Joe White, that's probably only going to occur this time and then 25 years from now. Once again, thanks to all of you for your presence here today. We are dismissed. Thank you.